It's all off and running in Indianapolis. Brett Veach has some comments. We have some takeaways. We're going to tell you what it means, and it's not what you think today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome in, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for making us your first listen here on kickoff smoke day at the NFL Combine. We have a lot to go over there. Brett Veach spoke. We'll break it down for you here with our guy, Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform, as well as 41 is the mic. You know him. You love him. He tells us the stuff that is real and not real. So we're going to break all that down for us. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, home of the Athletic Matrix, where this weekend's events is really a lot of what my offseason revolves around. I'm going to give you guys some samples. Make sure you are on Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter so you can see that. I'm sorry, X. And then we will have the Matrix and the draft guide out, and we'll have more on it at NFL33.com and RGRfootball.com. Chris is over at KC Chiefs Corner, breaking down the business and the quarterbacks and the metrics and the stuff that you need to know, like, this invisible cap space we don't have right now. You can check that out over there. And Matt does all of his work at ChiefsDigest.com. We thank you for being with us, you everydayers that are always here. We can't thank you enough. You know us for going on 10 years now doing this show. And if you want to be an everydayer, we have an easier way for you to do it. It's the Everydayer Club. It's over at lockedonchiefs.supercast.com. You get ad-free audio. You get in the Discord, the inner circle, so to speak, so you know stuff before it happens. Check that out, and we're going to have fun. We'll break down Brett Veach's appearance. Then we will talk about 2 stars that he did mention, but we want to dig a little bit deeper. And then we're going to come back later in the show and tell you about what the positional takeaways are, along with some departures. There's a lot that went into today. And anytime you get the GM, Matt, you got to enjoy that. But you got to bring your Rosetta Stone too, because it's not all plain English. And that's where I want to start today. Brett Veach said a lot of things. What was your top takeaway that wasn't about the stars? Like, is Jawaan Taylor going to be here for a while? Are they looking to do something else? What's your top thing?
You mentioned the Rosetta Stone, and that's one thing. There's always a couple of things whenever Brett Veach talks, and I say this because I love Brett. I mean, Brett is about as transparent as they get when it comes to GMs. I mean, he will talk and he will share, and you'll get 5-minute answers to things, which is great. It's just occasionally he does try to, say things from a certain point of view and everything, and try to Obi-Wan Kenobi you with some Jedi mind tricks. And so sometimes you do wonder if it's a smoke screen. Is he trying to set things up? And then there are always a couple of times when there's things that Brett talks about and 2 people can walk away with 2 completely different impressions of what he said. And, it's one of the reasons why I love Brett. I mean, and, it's, he does share details. And one of the things I thought he mentioned, and you mentioned Jawaan Taylor, and this was kind of a conversation Chris and I were having earlier. I mean, here's a little trick I have learned over the years with talking with Brett, is that if you ask him about something and he kind of answers it but changes the subject, he did it for a reason. And so I had to go back and look at what he said about Jawaan Taylor. And the great thing about Jawaan is that he was asked about Jawaan, and there was a chance that he might be back. And he kind of mentions Jawaan's name, mentioned him twice, but then started talking about completely other topics. So it's kind of your little nugget there that, he's trying not to answer the question, but he's trying to at least help you by answering other questions. And when talking about Jawaan, didn't flat out come out and say that they're keeping Jawaan or anything, but he did talk about the fact that, hey, they still got $60 million in contracts that they can convert. And I don't think they're going to do that with all that money, but it does let you know, at least what they're thinking is as far as how much money that they could free up that they want to. They're still not quite under the cap, even with the Mike Dana move. So they need 1 or 2 more moves to get under the cap for the beginning of the new league year. Then a little bit more money for free agency. And then we'll see just, how big of players they will be in free agency.
It's interesting to me to hear him say that. And I will say this about your comment about the $60 million convertible. as a number nerd, I really love the fact that he was able to spout that off. Like, I understand, like, a GM should be able to tell you where they are with the cap at just about any time. So, I mean, knowing that he has that number that he can just spit out there and throw it out and make people think that they can go do things. And they can. They have extreme roster flexibility. And the thing I love about that is that they did it without really getting into a situation where you're dealing with a bunch of void years on contracts. So you're doing it at a better way than maybe some of the other teams in the NFL are. We'll see if it works out for him. It's worked out for him so far. And you look back at a team like the Eagles, where they have all this cap money that they've got to get figured out because of void years. The Chiefs don't have to do that. So they're in a great position there. One of the other things that I loved that I saw today was, I think they're last in the league, I think, in dead money right now, or close to last in the league in dead money. That also means that you're doing what you should be doing with the salary cap. That makes a ton and a huge difference when you start talking about what they can do going forward. Is there any other big takeaways you had, Matt?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the dead money, because that's also something that, Brett kind of alluded to a couple of times today, is that, that they do try to be pretty smart with how that they spend their money and how they do juggle things around. And yet, we are at a time where it's not completely apples to oranges, because some teams have started their cuts and some haven't. But to your point, Chris, I mean, yeah, the Chiefs, entering yesterday before the Mike Nana move, were number one in the league in the least amount of dead cap money, at like $215,000 of dead cap. And, you want to know where that comes from. I mean, that's just mostly like bonus money that you gave to undrafted free agents. I mean, that's the kind of dead cap you're talking about there.
Compared to the $300 million salary cap. Sorry.
Even with, the dead money that they're taking off of the Mike Dana deal, they're still near the bottom of the league in dead cap money. And then you've got teams like the Eagles, which you mentioned, being a team that loves their void years. I think they're $38 million in dead cap. Chiefs aren't going to even get close to there, even if they do walk away from Jawaan Taylor. And if there's any others, veteran moves like Drew Tranquil is probably the only other one would be on my radar. They're still not going to get
in dead cap space. Sorry,
close. Yeah, they're not going to get anywhere close to where some of these teams are, like the Dolphins and the Browns of the world, and the Saints, for crying out loud. I have no idea how the Saints can have so much dead cap money when they don't have anybody decent on their team.
It's because they do it every single year. Sorry, Ryan. I know I'm interrupting you, but they do this every year. They go and they add void years, and you got somebody that is like maybe a top 30 player that's getting a void years 5 years down the road, so they get a vet minimum contract type thing. That is the problem with doing what they're doing. Eventually they'll have to pay the Pied Piper. And the bigger problem with the Saints that you don't have with the Eagles is what have the Saints done? Like, they can't field a good team, and yet they have all this cap issue that they're going to have to deal with. The Eagles at least won the Super Bowl a year ago, so I mean, you feel like that at least makes a little bit of sense comparatively. Sorry, Ryan. I know I interrupted.
No, you're okay. You got to get the capology in there.
You didn't give out $38 million in dead cap money to David Carr, so you got that going for you.
I mean, I'll sign up to take a hit. I'll get hit for $38 million. Let's go. I mean, that's fine. Hey, anybody can hire me. Now, those guys are all decisions to be made that they have to have the debate. There's not as much debate except about how to get there with the stars. Trent McDuffie, Travis Kelce, Brett Veach talked about them. I think they're both going to be back. I think it's done. We're going to find out what Matt thinks next. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which ones might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and the only one is going to take that top spot. My favorite thing about 5-Hour Energy is it gives you that boost with zero sugar. So I get the pick-me-up, and I don't have that sugar crash later, and that's what I need for absolute certain. So all you got to do is get into the flavor of it, whether you want confetti craze or fruity rainbow, cotton candy, all of them. Make sure that you get what you're looking for. I personally consider a little bit of everything what I'm looking for. I like cotton candy, so that's probably what I'd pick today. That's why you want to be there, and that's probably where I'd put it, right at the top of the draft right now. You can do the same. Find your new flavor at 5-Hour Energy. Those shots are available only online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Now, folks, you want to make sure that you get on the Everydayers list. So you don't have to listen to the ads, and you can get in the Discord. It's at lockedonchiefs.supercast.com. You can also go over to chiefsdigest.com and get Matt's work because it's right there for you as well. And we have all these other outlets. We appreciate that you check them out. Now, we have 2 stars that Brett Veach mentioned, and I think they're in similar situations. But, Matt, I want to hear your opinion on it. Before that, though, since I didn't get a chance to mention this last segment, the thing that made me smile the most out of Brett Veach's presser today was the fact that he acknowledged the step forward that Kingsley Suamataia made, and that seemed to lock down what they felt about the interior offensive line. Now, knowing that you have to get McDuffie done and you want to get Travis Kelce done, I think that kind of feeds into that's another youthful player that they're going to continue to ride with. Your thoughts on what he had to say about Trent McDuffie and Travis Kelce, but if you have an opinion on Kingsley as well.
Yeah, you're right about Kingsley. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, he had a complete turnaround from when he struggled at left tackle as a rookie year to move into left guard. It was obviously the right move, and it worked out well for him. And yeah, when you've got Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith in that interior too, you have an interior that you can build around. And that's why, I mean, with Eric Bieniemy coming back, I mean, this team, if they change things differently up front and with the tackles that they have, if Josh Simmons can step forward in year 2 as well, if Jaylen Moore can continue to step forward, you should be okay there. And and you can be optimistic that if when you get to the draft you get a more dynamic runner, that you can do some things. Certainly on the offensive side of the thing, if you bring back Travis Kelce, if he decides to come back, you're going to be in good shape. And honestly, I mean, Andy Reid and Brett Veach have both left the door open either way. They're not painting Travis Kelce into a corner. It certainly sounds like that. I mean, they're absolutely, obviously keeping the door wide open, and if they're just reading the tea leaves and seeing which way the smoke has been kind of blowing with some of the things that even Travis has said, I certainly get the feeling that it's more and more going that he is going to come back for 2026, and we'll see if that unfolds. With McDuffie, that was like one of the first things that Brett Veach both talked about and was asked about, and saying it was the number one thing on his agenda. And that's the other thing that happens at the combine. It's not necessarily all about the draft picks. It's also a convention. Almost every team, I mean, Les Snead and the Rams won't be there, and there's a few other folks that stay home. But you run into other GMs. You get to find out what they think, what they're looking for. You talk to the agents who are there. You get those conversations going as well. So this is it's if there's anything to read into the conversations about Trent McDuffie, it's that Brett Veach saying that that's the number one thing on the agenda here at the combine tells me that there's not been a lot of progress so far. And that's a little bit concerning because, that tells me that I'm not sure how close the two sides are, if they have been having negotiations, if they have been exchanging numbers. Brett's usually a guy that holds those things till the very, very end. It's just one of his negotiation tactics. Is he likes for things to get done in a short period of time and not tip his hand too early. So it's nothing different. And honestly, though, it wasn't a whole lot different than we heard when talking in the past about Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed. And obviously, those were two situations that ended radically different. So I don't know if I learned a whole lot about what he wants from Trent McDuffie, other than he's talking positively about Trent McDuffie.
It's going to be interesting to me to see what they do with Trent McDuffie. The fact that it doesn't sound like there's really been any kind of moves, and he's bringing him up at the combine. You have to wonder if there's conversations that are going to be going on about, hey, do you have any interest in trading Trent McDuffie? Or, what is it going to cost if you want to trade Trent McDuffie? What could you get out of trading Trent McDuffie? Like, I think that those are the types of conversations that you have, and you talk about all the agents there. You talk about all the other executives there. You could be literally walking around the combine and have a conversation with 2 or 3 different teams about Trent McDuffie in a 15-minute window, just because you're seeing people that you don't normally see. Sure, you can make a phone call and it's easy that way, but this sets things up for trades happening and other things happening. And maybe it's a scenario where they find numbers that can get the deal done. But Ryan and I have kind of talked about this, and I would imagine you're kind of in the same boat, Matt. Although I will ask you, what do you think his value is if they want to sign him to a long-term deal?
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing is that, do they share the same view on his value? Because I certainly get the impression, and again, this is just, not from direct conversations or anything, but just, what's kind of been said, the actions that you have seen has been that, hey, McDuffie and his camp view him as a true, legitimate, top of the market cornerback, and that he will want to be paid like that. I mean, if you're the Chiefs, you love Trent McDuffie, but you've got to have a realistic view of his value, that he's top of the market slot corner, that he is not top of the market outside corner. And that's going to be the difference of a significant amount of money per year. I mean, that could be a $5 to $8, $10 million difference in how you perceive that value. And are the Chiefs willing to pay him maybe a little bit more? Because they do obviously value McDuffie as a flexible player who can go from inside to out and do both those things. It's just that I think he got, you kind of got exposed in 2025 that he is not necessarily one of the top 3, top 5 outside corners in the league, even if he is maybe the best slot corner in the league. So that's going to be the tough thing, is coming together on that, because, hey, if Trent McDuffie and his camp view him as a $30 million player and the Chiefs view him as 22, I don't know how that bridge gets gapped. And, we've seen that show before. And then you have to consider the trade value. Trent McDuffie has a certain amount of value right now. A year from now, he's not going to have that value, because the only leverage you're going to have is the franchise tag. And yes, the Chiefs have traded players on the franchise tag before. It's been done. It's a risky maneuver, doesn't always pay off, and you're not necessarily going to get tremendous value, because once again, I mean, the team doesn't have a whole lot of control, and they know they're going to have to pay that player immediately. But hey, if you're the Chiefs, is it worth maybe getting a third for McDuffie in 27 versus a second and maybe a fifth in 26? I mean, it once again, it depends on the offers that they get, where they may decide, oh, you know what, and maybe it's better off making a trade or getting the comp pick in 27 and getting another year of Trent McDuffie than getting a second and maybe a middling third round pick, just depending on what kind of value other teams see in Trent McDuffie.
And those are hard decisions to make. Luckily, they don't have to make all the decisions this offseason. I did take away from Brett Veach's comments today about preparing for Travis Kelce in either scenario, meaning that they have a plan if he is not going to participate. I believe that means a top 2 or top 50 draft selection at that position. And if that's the case, I would put it to you, Matt, that's an either-or suggestion. Brett Veach can admit and recognize everything Travis Kelce's ever done, but you can't bring him back at the salary, even a reduced salary for what he's at, and still spend a top 50 pick on that position. I just don't see that working out. Do you disagree, or how do you take the comment about the Kelce situation?
Yeah, you could view it a couple of different ways. And honestly, I mean, it's the same thing that maybe the Chiefs addressed with running back, because this year it's not really a rich running back draft wise. Yeah, Jeremiah Love's at the top, but you may have 2 schools producing the top 4 or 5 picks, even backups going for Notre Dame before most starters are going to go from anybody else. Last year was an incredibly rich running back draft. And, do the Chiefs regret maybe not taking a running back last year? Maybe. The same thing may apply to tight end. If you wait until Travis Kelce's retired before you try to replace Travis Kelce, that's going to be tough. I mean, if you really think that this is going to be the last year of Travis Kelce, you probably do need to spend a second or a third round pick if you think that there's a player out there that's worth it. I mean, again, it's driven
me nuts that they continue to not touch it.
Oh, it's been crazy. It absolutely has been. It's been nuts. I mean, it's just, they've been just driving on empty for 3 years, waiting for that gas can to run out. And luckily for them, it hasn't. But you gotta be prepared at some point. And So, I mean, it seems like something that they have to consider. But again, it's been years that they have not truly been. They drafted Jared Wiley, so I give them credit for that. But, the fact that they haven't taken more shots at it really does surprise me.
Well, and again, it drives me nuts. You look at the scenario that you're talking about. They have had how many years where Travis Kelce should have been at least a conversation of, hey, how much longer do you think you're going to be playing? And, should we be looking at getting a tight end of some sort? Yeah, they got Jared Wiley. Great. But the bigger problem that you have is you are now paying a guy in Noah Gray that you're paying him okay money. It's not great, but are you getting the production? He took a step back last year. There's questions whether or not I don't see it happening, especially if Kelce doesn't come back. But if Kelce comes back, is it possible they cut Noah Gray just because you're in a cap situation where you have to figure out what you're going to do, and he doesn't really add anything to that position that you couldn't find for a much lesser amount? I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. When we get back, we have a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about some position games and how it's going to apply to this team right after this.
As the new year gets going and a lot of people try to simplify their routines, dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes and actually tastes great. They're rated number one by the users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. There are 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or even quick lunches. Over 30 options a week for including family-sized meals as well as some of the smaller, quicker options for your dietary choices. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off of your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off of your first box, plus free shipping, plus free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
If you've ever hired somebody who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I need to hire someone for this show, I go straight to Indeed to be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Now, a lot of positions need gains, need to play the game in order to make those gains. And I thought there were a couple of takeaways today, man, that did that. Obviously, he did address the Mike Dana release and that Mike is a good player and that he's put in a lot of effort here, called him as good as it gets. And I thought it was intriguing the way that he put it, that they're letting him explore the market, but they're staying in contact. I think that wait and see is something we've seen them do before, and players have returned on lower end contracts. And I think that's certainly within the offing here. I also want to say that the other player that they mentioned is monitoring is Brian Cook. That tells me that they expect him to receive an offer they don't feel that they can match. How do you read the comments on those two players?
Yeah, and Dana for sure. I mean, he has been a reliable player for this team. He's been fun to watch. He's always been accountable. I mean, that's a guy that you could always go to in the locker room and never turned anybody down. I mean, he's a quiet guy, but he was always willing to share his thoughts, and he was a very thoughtful guy. So I'm as a reporter, I'm going to miss him for sure. There's three players that Brett Veach mentioned in particular, along with Watson and Brian Cook and Leo Chanel as well.
Mhm.
And one thing that the Chiefs have been saying the last few years is that their biggest swings in free agency in this era of team building, and especially with Mahomes and his contract situation, and with the other big deals that they have, is that their big swings in free agency are going to be keeping their own guys. So that's the question: is that how many of those three can they keep? Like we've been talking about, I don't think that they can keep Leo Chanel. I think Leo is going to get a deal somewhere else that's going to offer him the opportunity to be a three-down player, maybe probably in a 3-4 defense, and that's just going to be too much for him to be able to turn down. Watson and Cook, I think, are two players that the Chiefs would love to be able to keep, but are they just going to be too expensive for this team? And that's one thing, because if you want to be able to keep those guys, you probably need to get them done before they hit free agency, and you'd be able to blow them away a little bit. That's obviously what they did with Chris Jones, where they reached the brink with him a couple of years ago. Uh, that's what you got to try and do. And I don't know if they can do that with both of them. It is probably an either or. And it's probably a little bit related to what happens with Trent McDuffie as well. If you don't bring back Trent McDuffie, or you're trading Trent McDuffie, then I think Jaylen Watson, keeping him becomes even more important. If you do keep McDuffie, you probably can't afford to keep Jaylen Watson as well. But I've certainly gotten the sense, even going back to the end of the year last year, that the Chiefs were really viewing Brian Cook as a centerpiece of what they want going forward. And, they also, of course, the other problem is that Brian Cook, I think his best skill set is as a strong safety, and they don't have any free safeties. So that's an issue that they're going to have to address somehow. But I thought it was very telling at the end of the season in that Week 18 game that you saw two veterans playing almost the entire time with the young guys out there on defense. And it was Nick Bolton and Brian Cook. And I think that told you everything about what the Chiefs were hoping to be able to do in 2026. And that's keep Brian Cook as a leader on the back end of that defense.
The interesting thing about this to me, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because I've been saying this for weeks, but it's positional value. I mean, that's what this is going to come down to, because when you're talking about paying Brian Cook, what's the positional value? Safety, I mean, top of the market's close to $20 million a year. Okay, can you afford to pay Brian Cook that? I don't know that you can. We'll see. Obviously, it could be a situation where, we talked about this at the start of the show. You cut Jawaan Taylor, and there's your $20 million, so you can go sign Brian Cook. But what else are you going to do to get any other cap room? So lots of different things that you would have to look at there. But the other question, and something you mentioned though, Matt, is what do they do with McDuffie? Because if at this point, if you can't get McDuffie re-signed and you do trade him, then you look at Jaylen Watson. What's his value on the open market? Corners, top of the market corners are $30 million a year. Are you going to be able to pay Watson 15 and feel okay with it? And two, will that get it done? That's really what the question is going to be, because you don't want to go into the season with neither of them.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look out there and you look at some of the projectors as what's maybe the market value for Brian Cook, I mean, I see a lot in the 14 to 16 million range, and I think that's probably fair. If you're the Chiefs and you're able to get him at 14 million, that's probably a pretty good deal. Then again, you think about it, and it has to account a little bit about the inflation, because obviously the cap has gone up. But you signed Justin Reed for 31.5, so about almost $10.5 million or so for Justin Reed. I mean, that's a little bit of a jump for Brian Cook, and I would say that Reed was a better player than maybe that Brian Cook has been in the last couple of seasons. So in that regard, is it worth it to jump up to that $14-15 million price point to keep Brian Cook? Well, the problem is then, do you have somebody that you really feel on the converse side does what he does?
Right.
Chamari Connor is a safety, but is a different player than Brian Cook. Chris Rowan Wallace is a different player than Brian Cook. So you've got different flavors, and the thing is you got three safeties right there, and again, none of them are free safeties, so
Right.
that doesn't answer one of your problems on your defensive side. But they also aren't the leaders that Brian Cook is, and as far as the football IQ goes, those guys are smart players too, but Brian Cook's on another level as far as being able to run the back end of that defense from the safety level. So that's a tough decision, and like you said, Chris, I mean, it is positional value. Can you afford to pay your safety that much? Especially when you're paying some other positions like your center and your right guard, top of the market money, and you still have Chris Jones, and you may have Travis Kelce coming back. I mean, once again, you can't pay everybody. And I do. I mean, with those three players we're talking about, and like Leo, Jaylen, and Brian, it's, hey, you may only be able to keep one of them. So which one of us that you try to keep?
And
prioritization.
yeah, pretty much. Really quick though, the one thing that when you start talking position games that we didn't talk about that I think is so key on all of this is Brett Veach did talk about how you have the linebackers and the running backs at the top of the draft, and those are probably some of the biggest players, but those aren't positional value. Like if you go draft them, you're really not helping yourself when you start talking about positional value. At 9, you should be getting a guy that is one of the top 5 positions if you can help it. And because the reality is yeah, you can go get Jeremiah Love at 9 and it saves you from saves you from paying a running back. Say you pay Travis Etienne, I apologize, $7 million a year. You're saving $1.5 million at running back. Drafting Jeremiah Love versus Etienne, the value isn't there. Where you look at some of those other positions, it could be $20 million in a difference of positional value. So that's really what this is going to come down to. It's fascinating because the Chiefs never have a draft pick at 9. Sorry, Ryan, I know I stole your thunder.
Yeah, no, the draft pick at 9 is a rarity, and we have to figure out how to do that. We're going to do that the rest of this week as we get closer and we start to see some results from the combine. We'll have news for you. We'll break it all down here like we do every day, but you can also get it at ChiefsDigest.com where Matt breaks it down. So, Matt, thank you for your insight and reading between the lines for us.
I appreciate it. Anything I can do, guys.
You all have a great one. We very much appreciate it. You check out lockedonchiefs.supercast.com to get ad-free audio and the Discord with our Everydayer Club. Have a great one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.